Hello everyone, I'm Carmine Gallo. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at Elephant Fest and for giving me the opportunity to talk about my new book, 5 Stars, or in Romanian, Cinci stele. I hope I have the pronunciation right. Cinci stele. 5 stars in English. Here's the English language version. The subtitle is The Communication Secrets to Get from Good to Great. And of course, I'd like to thank the publisher, Cărții Publishing, for making it available to you in Romania. I would love to visit your beautiful country, hopefully when we get the opportunity to travel again in a post-pandemic world, and I know we will. I think the architecture is beautiful. I love the spirit of its people. Like here in America, I think your history is one of highs and lows, of adversity and triumph. So don't lose that spirit of bravery and optimism. I think it's very easy to be positive and optimistic when times are good, but true heroes arise in times of adversity. Your ideas will drive your career forward, your country, your company, but ideas don't sell themselves. Ideas need a communicator, a storyteller, to advocate for those ideas. As an author, I have taken quite a deep dive into psychology and behavioral psychology for this book, 5 Stars. I think it's an important topic to understand how the brain works, because if you can understand how the brain of, your brain and the brain of your listener interprets or processes content and information, you will be far more successful. Communication is no longer a soft skill. Communication is what I call the human edge that will make you unstoppable, irreplaceable, and irresistible to employees. Especially these days, when in a post-COVID economy, I think there could very well be major disruptions in the workplace. And one of those changes is going to be that it is a much more competitive environment for which to get a job. And that's why you need to stand out. Ideas don't sell themselves. And this is a principal theme throughout my book. Ideas don't sell themselves, as I mentioned. As the forces of globalization, automation, artificial intelligence combine to disrupt every field, having a great idea is not good enough. To stand out, to get ahead, to get noticed, you need to persuade people, to inspire them, and to ignite their imagination, which is why I spend so much time in 5 Stars building that argument of why ideas are so important now more than ever. And so the first part of the book very much goes into the history of ideas. Your value today is no longer locked up in the land, for the most part, as it was during the agricultural age. Now, some countries are far more agricultural than others. I actually live in a state in the U.S. called California. A lot of people don't realize that much of this state, even though we have Apple and Google and Facebook, that we're still an ag state. But in America, at least, I'm not sure how it is in Romania, but certainly in America, we used to be 80% agriculture 100 years ago. Now it's 2% agriculture. Well, in the ag economy, your value is locked up in land. In the industrial economy, your value is locked up in the factories. Today, this is why we call it the knowledge economy, because you are only as valuable as your ideas. And again, ideas need an advocate. One of the many entrepreneurs and business leaders who I write about in 5 Stars is Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett has said that if you can improve your ability to sell your ideas through public speaking, through communication, that your value will increase in the workplace by 50% instantly. Who am I to argue? According to a number of surveys that I've seen, 90% of hiring managers say that an employee with stronger communication skills stands a much better chance of being hired and promoted to a leadership position than those employees who might even have more experience but lack communication skills. And there are a number of studies that you can find that actually just came out this year, one from LinkedIn, that found communication skills are in the highest demand among employers and yet the lowest supply, which means that there are a lot of people who are competing for jobs who do not have good communication skills. And yet that is the number one skill that employers are looking for today. Well, here's the best part. We already know how to do this. And that's why I call it the human edge. We know how to move people, how to communicate with them clearly, how to persuade them to take action on our ideas. Let me give you an example that you'll read about in my book in the very first pages, which is why I'd like to explain it to you, because maybe I think it translates in another country, but I'd like to explain it to you a little bit more clearly. I began with an experiment. I ask, well, let me give you some background first. In the States, we have what are called in the United States, we have the founding fathers. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence. So we're very proud of them, obviously. They're called the founding fathers. Well, one of them was Alexander Hamilton. And Alexander Hamilton created the modern banking system. If you ask, let's take Siri or Alexa or any other early, artificial intelligent devices. Ask Siri, who is Alexander Hamilton? And you will get a response. And the response is, Alexander Hamilton was an American statesman and a founding father of the United States. Accurate, true, and it is information. We have a playwright in America who is an award-winning Broadway playwright named Lin-Manuel Miranda. Now, you may have heard of his play, his musical called Hamilton, in which he combined history and hip-hop for the first time. Well, if you listen to Lin-Manuel Miranda describe Alexander Hamilton, he would say that Hamilton was a $10 founding father without a father. He got a lot farther by working a lot harder. He was young, scrappy, and hungry. The reason why he refers to $10 founding father is because he's on one of our bills, right? The $10 bill. My point is that Miranda does something that no robot, no artificial intelligence system could ever do. And that is combine history and hip hop, words and ideas to move you, to make you feel something. So powered by artificial intelligence, Siri and Alexa, they do their jobs great. They do their jobs remarkably well. And they can retrieve information in the blink of an eye. You cannot compete with them on retrieving information, but you can compete with them by combining imaginative and creative words and ideas to move people, to get people to feel something. I actually spoke to AI scientists, and I mentioned my observation, my very crude observation about Hamilton, and they were not surprised. One scientist actually told me, Carmine, we can build a robot that recognizes human emotion, but make no mistake, a robot does not have human emotion. Big point. That's why in 5 stars, I build the case that we all have the gift to move people, to excite them, to inspire their imagination. And mastering this, what I call the ancient art of persuasion, combining words and ideas to move people to action, that's no longer a soft skill. It is a fundamental skill that each and every one of us has access to. And it's more important now in this whole age of ideas. Now, remarkably, the secret to thriving in this new modern world was handed down to us 2,000 years ago by a famous Greek philosopher named Aristotle. He gave us the secret to managing and thriving in a new global digital environment. He said that in order for persuasion to occur, 3 things must be present. He called them ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos, let me just break down each one very quickly. Ethos is credibility for who you are. And evidence of your background, integrity, character, ethos. So if I don't have any ethos with you, it's going to be very hard for me to persuade you of anything. Second was logos. Logos in Aristotle's terminology meant making a logical appeal to reason, logic, evidence, statistics. But Aristotle believed that persuasion cannot occur in the absence of pathos. Pathos is emotion. And what is the best way of conveying or transferring our emotion from one person to another? And that's storytelling, which again is why I go into storytelling in 5 stars. Stories trigger a rush of neurochemicals in our brain. It's kind of like a popular hook in a popular song. You know, the song that you keep repeating that line. It's hard to forget. That's what stories do. They act in very much the same way. But keep in mind that there is differences between a bad story, a good story, and a great story that really moves people to action. So let me introduce you to a very simple structure that you can use today to be a more effective communicator. It's called the 3-act storytelling structure. In all Hollywood movies, in famous books, movies, fiction books especially, most of the time they fall under what's called a 3-act storytelling structure. Briefly, very briefly, Act 1 is always called the setup, Act 2 is the conflict, Act 3 is the resolution. So it's pretty simple. Act 1, the setup. This describes the world as it exists today. Let's say you are pitching an idea or a product to a new customer. Well, Act 1 is when you explain to the customer what their world is like today, the current state of the company or the world. Act 2 is the conflict. That's where hurdles and villains are introduced. So if I am pitching a product to a new customer, I would be showing that customer what hurdles or challenges they're facing today. And then, of course, Act 3 is the resolution, in which I show very clearly how my product or service will make my customer's world better, and everybody lives happily ever after. 3-act storytelling structure. Let's say you are interviewing for a job. You will want to paint a picture of where the company is today, where the challenges or hurdles are for that particular company, and how your experience, your skills, your credentials will help that company grow or overcome some of those challenges. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Always keep in mind that ideas that catch on are wrapped in story. Everything in 5 stars applies to your next presentation, a conversation, a communication of any type, in person or on virtual. The tools of communication have changed. Yes, in a pandemic world, we are doing more remote meetings and talking to each other virtually. Obviously, that is not going to exist forever. Although when we do come back, it'll be maybe a more hybrid world where we do have more virtual meetings, certainly than ever before. Everything that I talk about, though, applies because, again, the tools that we use to communicate with one another have changed, but the human brain has not. So if you understand how your audience, whether they're in person or virtually, process information, you'll be far more effective. So once again, mastering this ancient art of persuasion, combining words and ideas to move people to action, will be a significant advantage in your career. You can win the job of your dreams. You will sell more products, gain more customers, attract partners or employees or investors. It's a skill that I believe will make you far, far more valuable, not less, more valuable as the nature of work changes. I firmly believe that 5 stars is your competitive advantage in the age of ideas. Thank you very much for publishing my book in Romania, and thank you for the opportunity for me to giving me an opportunity to talk more about 5 stars. I wish you the best. I wish you success, and please keep in touch with me.